I was born in New Orleans on February 4th, 1947, and as a kid I grew up right by the racetrack on Deesay Boulevard in New Orleans. My dad was the maintenance man for the federal building in New Orleans, which was a big job. My mother later became the school secretary at Crossman Elementary School on Carrollton Avenue. I went to St. Leo the Great Elementary School from 1st through 5th, I think. I did 6th grade at Crossman Elementary School where my mother was working. Then I went back to St. Leo the Great for 7th grade. And then I went to St. Aloysius High School in New Orleans for 8th grade. Losing my dad as an 11-year-old had a tremendous impact on my life, except I really didn't know that until I was a much older person. You just kind of go along and do what you have to do when you're 11 years old, and it impacted my life tremendously, and you just miss a lot by not having one of your parents, and I realized that later in life. My mother remarried when I was 16. She married a gentleman from Norco, Louisiana, and named John Lucas. Ike Lucas was what his nickname was. And we moved from New Orleans to Norco I guess in 1963, which made a big problem for me because I was going to school on the corner of Rampart and Esplanade, and I didn't want to not finish my high school education at St. Aloysius, and I certainly didn't want to go to Destrehan High School for my senior year, having not been there for my freshman, sophomore, and junior year, because I would probably get beat up every day by the people in Destrehan. So my parents were good enough to let me drive every morning from Norco to St. Aloysius and back. Ultimately, you know, back in 1964, everybody was supposed to go be an engineer. And so I was going to go be an electrical engineer. And so I was trying to major in electrical engineering, but LSU and me and math and physics didn't get along that well. And so ultimately I changed my major to English, history, political science, general studies, whatever I could do to stay out of the draft. And ultimately LSU came to me and said, Mr. Walters, you have to pick a major. You have to leave here. And so I said, what do I have the most hours in? And they said, business. And so I majored in accounting and graduated from LSU in 1969 in accounting. During semester break or during Christmas break, a lot of LSU students from New Orleans would work during the holidays at stores in New Orleans. And so during the holidays in whatever year it was, probably 65, I worked at Maison Blanche on Canal Street in the men's clothing department, and I met this young lady named Norma who was working at Maison Blanche, also an LSU student, but she was working at Maison Blanche during the Christmas holidays, and she was working in the office somewhere, and it was one of those, didn't I see you at LSU moments? And she said, yeah, and kind of ignored me, but I was persistent. I have been married 53 or 54, probably 53 years. I got drafted, that's how my military career started. I was a senior at LSU, getting ready to graduate. I was taking my final exams and as a senior at LSU, and I came home to my wife and after my last final exam was over, and she said, I have some news for you. I said, what is that? And she handed me this envelope, and it was my draft notice. I decided that I would join the Air Force because there was a better chance of me not getting killed, and spent 4 years in the Air Force. I was sent to a terrible place called Fort Walton Beach, Florida, at Eglin Air Force Base, which was great. After my year and a half or so in Fort Walton Beach, I got notice that I was being transferred to Libya. Didn't want to go to Libya, but somehow my orders got changed and they sent me to Fairbanks, Alaska for 18 months. I had one son, Eddie, who was born in Florida, and while I'm in Fairbanks, Alaska, I had another son, John, who was born in Alaska. So we lived in a log cabin, believe it or not, in a log cabin in North Pole, Alaska. I left Fairbanks, Alaska, and got sent to Albuquerque, New Mexico, which I loved. I tell people all the time, if they had crawfish, I would have probably stayed there. I loved Albuquerque so much. But Norma, Eddie, John, and I got in Albuquerque for about a year. And during that period of time, I got accepted in LSU Law School. I started LSU Law School in 1973. But I was on the GI Bill, so I got paid, a couple of $100 a month by the GI Bill to go to school. So I went to school, and I went to school year-round, because if I didn't go to school, I didn't get my GI Bill money. So that's why I graduated early. I graduated in 2.5 years. When I was at LSU Law School, I needed a job, and a good friend of mine now, but at the time he was my boss, was a gentleman named Dean Sutherland, and he and I worked together in the LSU Law Library because I needed to have a job. And I told Dean one day, I said, "Dean, I got to get a job with a lawyer. I can't stay in this library forever. I need a job. I don't know any lawyers. I don't have any lawyers in my family." And so he told me that day, he said, "My brother has a friend named Charles Moore, Chick Moore, and he's here today, and I think he's looking for a law clerk, because he asked me if I wanted to be his law clerk, and I didn't want to be a law clerk, and so I'll introduce you to him." And I said, "Well, don't introduce me to him today, because I was in blue jeans and my hair was terrible and I hadn't shaved, and I had on an Army field jacket at the time." And so he said, No, Chick won't care. Chick won't care." So anyway, long story, I got introduced to Chick that day, and he hired me as his law clerk, and he and I were together for 35 years. It was just Chick and I in the very beginning, and we did whatever we could do then, and we kind of developed into the personal injury practice pretty early in the career. But early on, we did everything. We did divorces, we did criminal work. We represented a 15-year-old kid in a first-degree death penalty murder case, which was pretty intriguing work to do. In 1979, our whole practice changed irrevocably. I had a friend who was one of my study partners who worked at a firm in Baton Rouge, and he had a client who had a son who got picked up for possession of marijuana. And we ended up representing that family and that kid in that case. And within a few weeks, that kid named Keith Kent was working for, I forget the name of the company today, but he was working scraping concrete under a new road that was being constructed, and he was using a long 30-foot, 20-foot aluminum pole, and it hit a power line, and I don't want to say electrocute, because electrocute means died, shocked him tremendously, and he had brain damage. And Chick and I handled that case against Gulf States Utilities and the Barber Brothers Construction Company. And in 1979, we got a jury verdict for $3 million, which was the highest jury verdict in the history of the state at that time. Word spreads fast when you have success like that. After that, Kent versus Gulf States case was in the books. We got a lot of good referrals from a lot of people, and we handled several large accident cases and got large jury verdicts, large settlements, and it was just, it just made our law practice very fun, fulfilling, and financially remunerative. Chick and I practiced together, just he and I, for a long period of time. And we were getting a lot of referrals of medical malpractice cases, which we didn't particularly like, still don't. But Oscar Schoenfeld was recommended to me as a defense lawyer who does defend medical malpractice cases. And Oscar came with us, I think in 1985 or something like that, and stayed with us many years. And our business was building, and we had a lot of cases, so we ended up with Steve Thompson, who was a good lawyer at Keene Miller. He was with us for a long period of time. And then you came along, Darryl Papillon came along, and we ended up with Darryl Papillon, Abood Thomas, and Jay Cullens to have more younger lawyers helping us handle all the business that we had. And we were very successful as Moore, Walters, Thompson, Thomas, Papillon, Cullens. I think I got everybody. So after 35 years or so together, it was the right thing to do for the younger lawyers, Papillon, Thomas, Cullens, to go do their thing by themselves. And I decided it was the best thing for me to do to go with Darryl Papillon into this new firm. I was very active in the Baton Rouge Bar Association. Early on, I ran for the board in the Baton Rouge Bar, and I failed miserably. And then years later, I decided to do it again because I liked the Baton Rouge Bar Association. I wanted to do something in connection with it. And so I ran and got elected to the board. I forget when, but I was the president of the Baton Rouge Bar in 1993. In 1985, the Baton Rouge Bar Association was changing its newsletter from a one-page back-and-front flyer to a magazine. And so in 1985, they asked if anybody wanted to be a part of the editorial board of the magazine, please let us know. And so I let them know. And little did I know that the next magazine that came out, I was going to be the editor of the Baton Rouge Bar magazine named Around the Bar. And I was the editor-in-chief of that publication for 34 years. And I still had an active full-time practice here in Baton Rouge. And I tried to get different kinds of cases. In one situation many years ago, I had a lady who had been sexually abused by her psychologist, and this was before a lot of this has become prevalent. But anyway, I started handling those sorts of sexual abuse cases by people who had sex with their doctors and lawyers and that sort of thing. I had some renown in that area, and I ended up trying a case in Los Angeles. I tried a case in Los Angeles against Marvin Mitchelson, who was a lawyer out there who had sex with one of his clients. I ended up trying a case in Chicago for a person who had sex with her doctor. And my partner Darryl Papillon and I, through the years, ended up representing a lot of people who had sex with the wrong people. And a lot of them were people having sex with football coaches, priests, and lawyers and other people that should know better. These days, I still go to work every morning and practice. My partners are very helpful to me in not putting the type of demands I had on me for the first 45 years of my career. So I basically am allowed, because of my partners, to do what I would like to do and don't have to do what I don't. I just finished the final editing on a book being published by Full Court Press. And what it is a compilation of all of the articles that I have written in the Baton Rouge Bar magazine and the Louisiana State Bar Association magazine, the Louisiana Bar Journal. And it's an interesting little book that should come out, you know, sometime in the future. I would just like to be known as somebody who does a really good job, really prepares cases well, but is a nice person.